Hi everybody and welcome to our module on amyloidosis. The definition of amyloid is a pathologic aggregate of amyloid proteins, and we use the word pathologic because these aggregates of proteins are damaging to tissues. Basically, I think of amyloid as a clump of proteins that accumulates in the extracellular space of tissues like the brain or the kidneys or the heart and causes damage to those organs. Now, what's important to understand and what's confusing as a student is when someone says an amyloid protein is deposited in a tissue, they could be referring to one of more than 20 different proteins. There are lots and lots of proteins that are naturally occurring in the body that can accumulate in the extracellular space and form amyloid structures. These are called amyloid proteins, and different proteins form the amyloid that's involved in different diseases. The accumulation of amyloid in diseases can be either localized or diffuse, and in a number of other modules I've already discussed localized amyloid deposition. For example, in the neurology section when discussing Alzheimer's, we talked about how beta amyloid accumulates in the brain and forms amyloid deposits, and that leads to Alzheimer's. You can also have beta amyloid accumulate in the blood vessels of the brain, leading to a condition called cerebral amyloid angiopathy. And in the endocrine section, when talking about type 2 diabetes, we talked about how amyloid could accumulate in the pancreas. There is a protein called amylin that occurs in type 2 diabetes and forms amyloid structures in the pancreas, and that damages the pancreas. And these are all examples of localized deposition of amyloid proteins. Contrast that with diffuse amyloid deposition. When you have diffuse amyloid deposition in multiple different organs and tissues, that is called systemic amyloidosis. So there are a number of forms of systemic amyloidosis where amyloid proteins accumulate in lots of different organs and tissues, and each disorder has a different protein that forms the amyloid structures in the extracellular space. In primary or AL amyloidosis, light chains, which are a component of immunoglobulin, accumulate in tissues and form amyloid structures. We'll talk more about that in a few slides. In secondary or AA amyloidosis, a protein called serum amyloid A accumulates in tissues and forms amyloid structures, and that leads to amyloidosis. There is a dialysis-related form of amyloidosis that obviously occurs in patients on dialysis. This involves accumulation of beta-2 microglobulin and its formation into amyloid structures in tissues. As we get older, we can develop an age-related systemic amyloidosis. It's sometimes called senile amyloidosis. And this results from accumulation of transthyretin, which I'll talk more about in a minute, but transthyretin can also form amyloid aggregates of proteins. And then finally, there are a number of different familial forms of hereditary amyloidosis. They're all very rare. There are many types. One of the most common types is an abnormal transthyretin gene, which leads to accumulation of transthyretin similar to the transthyretin accumulations that occur in age-related amyloidosis. So let's pause here and talk about transthyretin because this molecule comes up a lot when discussing amyloidosis. Transthyretin was formerly called prealbumin, and it's sometimes referred to as prealbumin in older textbooks. Its job under normal conditions is to transport thyroid hormone and also retinol, which is a form of vitamin A. Because it transports thyroid hormone, that's why it's called transthyretin. In amyloidosis, when transthyretin accumulates and causes amyloid buildups, it's referred to as amyloid transthyretin, sometimes abbreviated ATTR. And transthyretin plays a role in two forms of amyloidosis. A mutant form of transthyretin is seen in patients who have hereditary amyloidosis. The normal transthyretin is seen in patients who have age-related or senile amyloidosis. So hopefully you're with me up to this point and you understand that amyloid is an extracellular collection of proteins that damages tissue, and there are lots of different proteins that can potentially accumulate and form amyloid. But no matter what protein forms amyloid, there are some common features to all amyloid collections in any disease that involves amyloid. The first common feature is that amyloid is pink on a standard biopsy with standard stains. It looks like many other proteins like collagen, fibrin, and other proteins. That means that in order to distinguish amyloid from these other proteins like collagen and fibrin, you have to use a specialized stain, and that specialized stain is called Congo red. When you stain biopsy specimens with Congo red, the amyloid will look pink under ordinary light, just like many other types of protein. However, when you put amyloid stained with Congo red under polarized light, amyloid protein collections will show what's known as apple green birefringence, and they will take on an apple green color like I've shown in this picture on the screen. So in other words, if you want to prove that there is a collection of amyloid proteins in a tissue biopsy specimen, you need to stain that tissue biopsy specimen with the Congo red stain and then place it under polarized light. Only amyloid collections of protein will show the apple green birefringence. Another feature of all amyloid collections of proteins is that the proteins will form beta-pleated sheets. A beta-pleated sheet is a secondary protein structure, so by way of review, the primary structure of proteins is its amino acid sequence. The secondary structure of proteins is the folding or twisting of the chains of amino acids. So the secondary protein structure of amyloid is that it forms what's known as beta-pleated sheets. These are sheets of proteins that are linked in a characteristic way. This is not something you're ever going to see under the microscope. This is detected by crystallography or spectroscopy. These are advanced techniques for analyzing protein structures. But no matter which of the many types of proteins come together to form an amyloid collection of proteins, what makes them into an amyloid collection is the fact that they form these beta-pleated sheets. And it is these beta-pleated sheets that are responsible for the Congo red staining that will turn apple green under polarized light. Now let's talk about some of the forms of amyloidosis in a little more detail, and I'll start by talking about AL, or primary amyloidosis. This form of amyloidosis is a plasma cell malignancy, often called a plasma cell dyscrasia. In this form of amyloidosis, malignant plasma cells overproduce light chains which deposit in tissues and form amyloid. Recall that light chains are a component of antibodies, and plasma cells normally produce antibodies. In this disorder, they overproduce the light chain portion of antibodies, and that's what forms amyloid in tissues. This can occur alone as a primary disorder, but it can also occur in association with other plasma cell disorders like multiple myeloma, Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, or sometimes lymphoma, and I talk about all of these disorders in other modules. When you do a bone marrow biopsy in this form of amyloidosis, you will see a monoclonal collection of plasma cells, and because it is a plasma cell malignancy, it can be treated with stem cell transplantation. AA amyloidosis is also called secondary amyloidosis, and the reason it's called secondary is because it occurs secondarily to chronic inflammatory conditions. It's common in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and inflammatory bowel disease. The reason that patients with these chronic inflammatory disorders can develop this form of amyloidosis is because the amyloid proteins in this disorder are formed by proteins called serum amyloid A proteins. Serum amyloid A proteins are acute phase reactants, therefore their levels are elevated in the setting of chronic inflammation, and they can deposit in tissues and cause amyloidosis. The serum amyloid A proteins are apolipoproteins. They've been shown to have a number of different roles in the inflammatory response, but the point for our module here is that they will deposit in tissues and form amyloid aggregates. Let me pause here and talk about a very rare disorder called familial Mediterranean fever. This is a rare hereditary disorder that's common among populations from the Mediterranean region of the globe. That's how it gets its name. It's an inflammatory disease that involves neutrophils, and patients have recurrent episodes of fever and inflammatory pain. The inflammatory pain is often described as serosal because it often involves serosal surfaces, especially in the abdomen. It can sometimes mimic appendicitis. You can also sometimes see inflammation around the heart that leads to pericarditis. The reason I'm bringing this up in the amyloidosis module is because patients with this rare condition have very high levels of serum amyloid A proteins, and secondary or AA amyloidosis is the major cause of death among patients who have this condition. Because it's a neutrophil disorder, you can treat it with colchicine. This is a medicine that inhibits neutrophils. Back to our discussion of the various forms of amyloidosis. Now let's talk about dialysis-related amyloidosis. This is obviously a condition that occurs in patients on dialysis who have end-stage renal disease. The protein that forms amyloid in this disorder is beta-2 microglobulin, and recall that beta-2 microglobulin is a component of MHC class 1. This is a complication of renal failure that occurs because dialysis does not effectively remove beta-2 microglobulin from the circulation. This disorder has a special pattern of amyloid deposition that is usually limited to the bones, joints, and tendons. Common symptoms that patients develop are shoulder pain from amyloid deposition in the capsule of the shoulder, or carpal tunnel syndrome from amyloid deposition in the carpal tunnel. This disorder is usually not diagnosed with a biopsy. Usually it's diagnosed clinically when a patient on dialysis develops a typical pattern of pain in one of these areas, and there's really no specific treatment for it. It's a common complication of patients who are on dialysis for many years. Age-related amyloidosis is also called senile amyloidosis. The protein that forms amyloid in this disorder is the wild-type or normal form of transthyretin, as we discussed previously. As the name implies, this form of amyloidosis usually develops in older patients, usually over 70 years of age, and the amyloid deposition predominantly involves the heart in this form of amyloidosis. In fact, many people think of it as simply a cardiac form of amyloidosis. There is evidence of other organ involvement, but that is rarely clinically significant. Familial amyloidosis is caused by an abnormal gene which leads to production of a mutant form of transthyretin that deposits in tissues and forms amyloid. The mutant transthyretin is produced by the liver, and for that reason, this is the one form of amyloidosis that is sometimes treated with liver transplantation. Even though patients are born with the abnormal gene, it takes many years for the amyloid to build up and cause symptoms, so symptoms usually do not occur until adulthood. Usually patients get symptomatic from this in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Now let's talk about the clinical features of amyloidosis, and you should know that amyloidosis is famous for being a difficult diagnosis to make. First of all, it's very rare. In addition, it can involve almost any tissue or organ, and most of the symptoms look like other disorders which are much, much more common. In the skin, a classic finding is periorbital purpura, also called raccoon eyes. This is an example of that shown on the screen here. The muscles can become enlarged from amyloid buildup. One of the ways you can sometimes see this clinically is by detecting an enlarged tongue. Nerves can be involved. This can lead to peripheral neuropathy. The liver can become enlarged. The bowel can be involved, and that can lead to malabsorption, and blood vessels can also be involved, and that can lead to bleeding. The kidneys are the most commonly involved organ. Amyloid buildup in the kidneys leads to proteinuria, and it can cause the nephrotic syndrome. I talk about this in more detail in the renal modules on the nephrotic syndrome. The heart can be involved in amyloidosis. Cardiac amyloidosis is a special interest of many people in my field. It classically leads to a restrictive or infiltrative cardiomyopathy, although it can cause many other forms of cardiomyopathy as well. Cardiac amyloidosis is especially common in primary or AL amyloidosis, which involves light chains. It's also common in the forms of amyloidosis that involve transthyretin, so the age-related or the familial forms. It presents with increased wall thickness seen on imaging of the heart and symptoms of diastolic heart failure. If you look at this image on the bottom left side of the screen, this is an echocardiography image of a patient with cardiac amyloidosis. The walls of this left ventricle are thick, and they also have a speckled pattern that is classic for cardiac amyloidosis. In addition, if you look at this EKG tracing from the same patient on the right side of the screen, the voltage on the EKG is very low. Usually when the walls of the left ventricle are thick, the voltage gets very high. For example, the QRS complexes could look something like this. The reason the voltage gets high when walls are thick is because usually thickened walls mean increased size of cardiac myocytes, and bigger myocytes generate more voltage. In the case of amyloidosis, the reason the walls are thick is because of buildup of amyloid protein, and amyloid protein does not generate electrical activity on the EKG. Therefore, a classic finding is left ventricular hypertrophy by echocardiography with low voltage on the surface EKG. Because of the amyloid buildup in the heart, this can lead to arrhythmias, and sudden death is a major problem for patients with cardiac amyloidosis. So as I told you before, amyloidosis is a difficult diagnosis to make. It's very rare, and the symptoms mimic many other disorders. When you do suspect a patient of having amyloidosis, you need to perform a biopsy and demonstrate that amyloid is infiltrating tissues. Now, you could biopsy the heart or the kidneys, but these organs are difficult to reach, and it's generally risky to biopsy those organs. So instead, what's usually done is something called an abdominal fat pad biopsy. If you look at this picture of this man on the screen, what the surgeon does is numb the skin in an area of the abdomen like I'm drawing with my pen. The surgeon then puts in a needle and takes multiple samples of the fat in the abdomen. This is easy to access, it's a low-risk procedure, and it has generally good sensitivity for detection of amyloid buildup. Once you prove that there's amyloid building up in the abdominal fat, you know that there's amyloid building up elsewhere, and you've made the diagnosis. If the fat pad biopsy is negative and you still suspect amyloidosis, you can then go on and biopsy other organs like the heart or the kidneys. So amyloidosis can be a confusing topic to learn as a student, so let me leave you with this summary slide. Remember that amyloidosis has that diffuse collection of signs and symptoms that can mimic many other diseases. It's diagnosed by a biopsy, usually an abdominal fat pad biopsy, and that biopsy will show typical features of amyloid deposition, including positive staining with the Congo red stain, showing apple green birefringence under polarized light. Once you identify that amyloid is building up, you then need to figure out which type of amyloid the patient has. In primary amyloidosis, the amyloid is formed by light chains. In secondary amyloidosis, it's formed by serum protein A. In dialysis, it's formed by beta-2 microglobulin, and then there are two forms of amyloid where transthyretin forms amyloid buildup. One is called the senile form, that's caused by normal transthyretin. The other is the hereditary form caused by a mutant version of transthyretin. And that concludes our module on amyloidosis.